Hello, everyone, and welcome to a Wednesday edition of the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. Dan Labbe with Mary Kay Cabot and Ashley Bastock, and we are continuing our 23 question series. We're going to do two more questions here on this podcast. We're going to talk about the safeties, and we're going to talk a little backup quarterback as well on this podcast. So let's start with first the safeties. And Ashley, this was your question that you did a post on. How different will safeties' jobs be under Jim Schwartz? So I guess get us started here. What sort of is the premise of what you wrote about?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it was largely about how the safeties room looks different this year. Obviously, JJ3 is gone. Ronnie Harrison Jr. is still out there as a free agent. They've brought in Juan Thornhill, who obviously has this championship pedigree from his time in Kansas City. Winning a couple Super Bowls over there in the first couple years of his career. And they also brought in Rodney McLeod, who is a Jim Schwartz guy. He spent 6 seasons in Philly. Most of those were playing under Jim Schwartz as D coordinator. He won a Super Bowl there in 2017. But it's also how the safeties are used in Jim Schwartz's system. And from what we've seen so far, it is different than how those guys were used under Joe Woods, where, JJ3 was pretty much your dedicated free safety at that starting spot. Grant Delpit was the strong safety. We've seen these guys, they've essentially said there are no free and strong safety positions, no dedicated spots at those positions. It's right and left. We've seen Juan Thornhill play up. We've seen Grant play back, something we didn't really see too much of last year in my memory. And we've seen vice versa. And then, of course, you have Rodney, who kind of comes in there. I know Ephraim Banda, the safeties coach, joked that he calls him Coach Rodney, I believe, because he just has such an understanding of Jim Schwartz's defense. But this whole no free and no strong safety was kind of like the genesis of this idea for me, because we heard a lot of guys talk about that in minicamp and OTAs.
So Mary Kay, this wasn't like a full remaking of the safety room. There are guys back, but of course the big change is John Johnson III gone, as Ashley mentioned, and Juan Thornhill in. How is this time going to be different from the last time, right? Like John Johnson was a big time free agent safety signing. Juan Thornhill kind of the same deal, sort of making up for that not working out. How is Juan going to be different, adding him instead of JJ3?
Well, I think they're going to have to see how it fits together. I think we all expected that JJ3 was going to be that key piece in the secondary, and everyone was really excited about what he was going to bring to the table. And then ultimately we came to find out that, he didn't necessarily think that he was being used in ways that maximized his abilities and skill set. Jim Schwartz comes in with a completely different philosophy. So that's probably the number one difference. Maybe Jim Schwartz would have seen John Johnson III differently than Joe Woods did. But I think, that's part of it, is that Jim Schwartz is bringing a new pair of eyes to the secondary and the safety position. And he's also going to be playing a lot of 3 safety sets. We do know that about him. I think there will be more times when you'll see 3 safeties on the field than you will see 3 linebackers on the field. So that versatility is very key. These guys have to be able to, cover the tight ends and the backs and do all the things that they need to do. They have to be able to stop the run. They have to be able to play deep and all kinds of different things that they need to do. So there will be plenty of times when Juan Thornhill, Grant Delpit, and Rodney McLeod are on the field at the same time. There will be times when one of those guys is playing over the slot receiver or whoever's in the slot. And so, these guys have to be able to be jacks of all trades. They have to be able to do everything. But hopefully Juan Thornhill will be everything to the Cleveland Browns that he was to the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, he was a very key player, a key contributor. One of the things that I think he does really well is he's a ball hawk. And he can get some of those interceptions. And if those guys up front are doing their job, which we know that they are going to be doing their job up front, then I think there will be those opportunities for Juan Thornhill and others to get those takeaways.
Ashley, we haven't been around Juan